When you wake up in the morning and take your first breath of the day, do you ever pause and ask yourself who owns your peace? Who owns your heart? Who owns your freedom? This question is not a small one. It cuts through the surface and goes directly to the core of how you live your life. Too often we place our happiness into the hands of other people. We wait for their approval. We crave their validation. We lean on their words to feel complete. But what if I told you that this dependence is the very thing holding you back from your true strength? There is a quiet power inside you that does not need to be fueled by anyone else. When you stop waiting for someone to tell you that you are enough, when you stop hoping for someone to fill the empty spaces inside you, you begin to see that you were never lacking in the first place. Emotional dependence is like a cage made of soft walls. You may not see the bars, but you feel the limitation. You feel the constant need to be reassured, to be comforted, to be held up. And every time you hand over that power, you lose a little piece of yourself. To stop being emotionally dependent does not mean you push everyone away. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you start standing. It means you grow roots in your own ground. It means you sit in silence and meet yourself fully without distraction. It is in this stillness that you discover your own inner balance. You learn to breathe through discomfort. You learn to hold your own hand when life shakes you. You learn to calm your own storms instead of waiting for someone else to quiet the waves. The strength you are looking for does not arrive with applause. It grows quietly when you practice self-awareness, when you build discipline, when you forgive yourself, and when you create space between your feelings and your reactions. This space is where freedom lives. This space is where no one can reach in and control your mood. This space is where you take back ownership of your life. Every time you depend on another person to fix your emotions, you train your mind to stay weak. Every time you soothe yourself, you train your mind to become resilient. The choice is always yours. And the more you choose self-mastery over emotional dependency, the stronger your spirit becomes. People will still come and go. Love will still flow in and out. But your core will remain unshaken. When you begin the journey of building inner strength, it starts with a single decision to take responsibility for your own emotional state. Every emotion you feel is a visitor within you, not a force that owns you. Too many people hand over their inner world to others, waiting for a message, a smile, or a word of reassurance to decide how they should feel. This is the root of emotional dependence. True strength grows when you shift from seeking external validation to regulating your own emotions. It is not an instant transformation, but a daily practice that changes how you experience yourself and the world. Imagine a person standing in the middle of a storm. Rain falls, winds roar, and yet they remain rooted. This steadiness does not come from the storm being mild, but from the person's ability to stay centered regardless of what happens. This is the power of self-regulation. You learn to recognize your rising emotions, breathe through them, and guide them instead of letting them control you. It is like training a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger and more automatic it becomes. Every time you rely on others to lift you, you give away your ability to lift yourself. You become a passenger rather than the driver of your own emotional state. But when you begin to build that inner strength, you teach your mind and body that peace can be created from within. You discover that you are not powerless against the tides of emotion. You are not a victim of moods. You have the capacity to stand firm, breathe deep, and choose your response. This freedom is what separates a dependent life from an empowered one. Start by noticing when you reach for external comfort at the first sign of discomfort. Instead of sending a message to feel better, sit for a moment and breathe. Ask yourself what you are feeling. Name the emotion without judging it. This practice creates space between the feeling and your reaction. That space is where self-mastery begins. You realize that your emotions are transient, like clouds passing across the sky. You do not need to cling to them, nor do you need someone else to disperse them. This awareness becomes your foundation. Another powerful step is to build small rituals that ground you in your own strength. Physical movement, breathing exercises, journaling, meditation, or spending time in nature can all reconnect you to your own energy. These habits teach you that when you are unsettled, you can stabilize yourself. Over time, this reprograms your nervous system to remain calm under pressure. Instead of reaching outward, you naturally turn inward and find balance. This shift may seem subtle, but it rewires your identity. You move from being someone who waits for others to soothe you to someone who knows how to soothe themselves. When you live from this place of inner strength, relationships transform. You are no longer desperate for approval or terrified of rejection. You can listen to others without losing your center. You can give love without clinging and receive love without fear. This balance allows deeper and healthier connections because they are no longer built on neediness, but on mutual respect and shared growth. You stop draining others for support they were never meant to provide endlessly, and instead offer your presence as a whole person. It is important to understand that building inner strength is not about becoming cold or shutting off your emotions. It is about becoming conscious and intentional with them. Emotions are natural, but they become destructive when they own you. By regulating your emotions, you honor them while still standing in your own authority. This is not repression. It is mastery. It is the difference between being swept away by a river and learning to swim within it. When you develop this power, life does not necessarily become easier, but it becomes clearer. Challenges still appear, people still disappoint, and circumstances still change. But your inner stability remains. This stability gives you a sense of self-respect that no one can grant or take away. Each time you handle your emotions with grace, you strengthen your identity as someone who is whole and complete without needing external confirmation. This creates a quiet confidence that draws others to you naturally, yet it no longer dictates your self-worth. Ultimately, building inner strength by regulating your own emotions frees you from the endless cycle of chasing approval and fearing rejection. It opens a doorway to genuine self-respect and unshakable confidence. The more you practice, the more you will see that you are capable of creating peace, power, and balance from within. And when you stand in that place, you become untouchable by the changing moods and opinions of others, holding your own center with calm dignity and a steady heart. Recognizing your worth as independent of others' approval or opinions is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in life. From the moment we are young, we are conditioned to measure ourselves by how others respond to us. We look to teachers for grades, to parents for praise, to friends for acceptance, and later to society for recognition. Over time, this constant measuring can turn into a habit of seeking permission to feel valuable. Yet the truth is that your worth is not a currency given to you by others. It is already present within you. It does not rise and fall with someone's praise or criticism. It is steady, like the sun hidden behind the clouds. Learning to see it for yourself is the heart of becoming emotionally independent. When you tie your sense of worth to the approval of other people, you build your house on shifting sand. On days when others like you, your confidence rises. On days when they ignore or reject you, your confidence collapses. This is not stability, and it creates a cycle of emotional dependency that drains your energy and identity. The first step in breaking this cycle is to stop outsourcing your value. Instead, remind yourself that your worth is intrinsic, unearned, and unchanging. You were born with it. It is not something you have to prove or earn over and over again. To recognize your worth means to stand in front of a mirror and see beyond appearance, beyond achievements, beyond the opinions of people who barely know you. It means to honor the quiet dignity of simply being. This recognition does not make you arrogant. It makes you free. You no longer chase validation as if it were oxygen. You begin to realize that the opinions of others are reflections of their own experiences, not definitions of who you are. Their judgments are filtered through their own fears, desires, and expectations. When you see this clearly, their approval becomes optional rather than essential. A practical way to begin this shift is to notice how often you adjust yourself to please or impress others. Pay attention to the subtle ways you seek nods, likes, or verbal approval. Each time you catch yourself, pause and return inward. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it expresses my truth or because I want someone else to validate me? Over time, this practice helps you untangle your choices from the need to be liked. It teaches you to act from authenticity rather than fear. This builds a self-respect that becomes unshakable. Another step is to cultivate gratitude for your own qualities and efforts. Each day, acknowledge something you value about yourself. It could be your persistence, your kindness, your creativity, or your resilience. By actively appreciating yourself, you reinforce the message that your worth does not depend on being noticed. This practice might feel awkward at first, especially if you have been taught to downplay yourself. But it is an essential part of rewriting the inner narrative that says you are only as good as others think you are. When you truly recognize your worth, you also begin to set healthier boundaries. You stop tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or relationships that drain your spirit. You become more selective about who you allow close to you, not out of arrogance but out of respect for your own energy. This self-respect creates a ripple effect. People start treating you in alignment with how you treat yourself. You also inspire others to do the same, simply by modeling what it looks like to value oneself. It is also important to remember that recognizing your worth does not mean you become close to feedback or growth. You can still listen to constructive criticism, still learn, still evolve. The difference is that feedback no longer defines your value. It becomes information you can use rather than a verdict on your identity. This freedom allows you to grow without fear, because mistakes no longer threaten your sense of self. As you deepen this understanding, your relationships will naturally shift. You will love more openly, because you are not giving love to gain approval, but to share your abundance. You will experience rejection with more grace, because you know it does not diminish your essence. You will pursue your goals with more courage, because failure does not make you unworthy. This is the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own value. Living from this space also reduces comparison. When you recognize your worth, you stop measuring your life against others. You see that everyone is on their own path, carrying their own lessons and timing. This releases envy and insecurity. You begin to celebrate others' successes without feeling smaller yourself. This mindset not only strengthens your emotional independence, but also enriches your sense of connection, because you are no longer relating to others from a place of lack. Ultimately, recognizing your worth independent of approval is not a one-time decision but a daily practice. It is choosing, over and over, to return to yourself, to trust yourself, and to stand firm in your inherent dignity. As you do this, the voices of doubt and dependency grow quieter. The need to be validated fades, replaced by a steady knowing of who you are. And from that place, you live not as someone waiting for permission, but as someone already free. Developing self-awareness to understand your emotional triggers and responses is like opening a door to your own inner world. Many people move through life reacting without ever questioning why they feel what they feel. They get angry, sad, jealous, or anxious, and assume the situation outside of them is to blame. But the truth is that every emotional reaction begins within. By learning to observe and understand your triggers, you stop living on autopilot and start living consciously. This is where emotional independence begins to deepen, because self-awareness gives you the power to choose rather than simply react. When you develop self-awareness, you start to recognize the patterns that run your emotional life. You notice the people, situations, or memories that spark a strong reaction inside you. You begin to see the stories you tell yourself when you feel hurt or overlooked. Instead of being swept away by those emotions, you can pause, breathe, and name them. This simple act of naming what you feel creates distance between you and the feeling. That distance is powerful because it gives you room to decide how you want to respond instead of being driven by impulse. To cultivate this level of awareness, you must be willing to look at yourself honestly. It requires courage to admit that some of your reactions are habits formed long ago, shaped by past experiences or fears that no longer serve you. Self-awareness does not mean judging yourself. It means observing with compassion and curiosity. When you can see your patterns without shame, you are able to transform them. This inner work becomes the foundation of emotional freedom. One of the most effective ways to build self-awareness is to slow down and spend time alone in reflection. Sitting quietly, breathing deeply, or writing in a journal allows you to witness your inner dialogue. Ask yourself what you were thinking right before you felt upset. Trace the emotion back to its root. Was it fear of rejection, desire for approval, or feeling unworthy? Each time you uncover the real, because you dissolve a little of its power over you. Over time, this practice becomes second nature, and you will start noticing your triggers, even in the middle of daily life. Another helpful step is to pay attention to your body, because your body often reacts before your mind does. Tension in your shoulders, a racing heart, or clenched fists can signal an emotional trigger, even before you name the feeling. When you catch these early signs, you can intervene quickly with a breath, a pause, or a grounding exercise. This prevents you from spiraling into a reaction you might regret later. The more you listen to your body, the better you become at managing your emotional state. Developing self-awareness also changes the way you interact with others. When you understand your own triggers, you stop blaming people for making you feel a certain way. Instead, you take ownership of your emotions and communicate with clarity. You can express your needs without attacking or withdrawing. This strengthens your relationships and creates healthier boundaries. Others feel safer around you because you are steady and responsible for your own feelings. This stability naturally draws respect and trust. As your awareness deepens, you will also recognize the positive triggers in your life. The things that uplift, inspire, and energize you. By noticing these, you can choose to spend more time around them and less time around the things that drain you. This is another form of emotional independence, because you are consciously shaping your environment rather than letting it shape you. It is important to remember that self-awareness is a lifelong practice, not a destination. You will always be discovering new layers of yourself. Some days you will slip back into old habits and react unconsciously. This is normal. What matters is that you keep returning to awareness, keep observing, and keep learning. Over time, the gaps between reaction and reflection grow wider, and in that space you become free to act from your highest self. This inner work might feel uncomfortable at first because it requires honesty and patience. But the reward is immense. You gain a clearer sense of who you are, what you value, and how you want to show up in the world. You begin to trust yourself because you understand yourself. You no longer fear your emotions because you know how to navigate them. This is the quiet confidence of someone who is emotionally independent, someone who lives with eyes open and heart steady. By developing self-awareness to understand your emotional triggers and responses, you stop being a prisoner of your past and step into the role of creator in your present. You replace blind reaction with conscious choice, and this choice shapes a life of dignity, strength, and freedom. Practicing self-care and self-compassion to create emotional stability is the act of turning inward and treating yourself as the most important relationship you will ever have. Too often we are taught to pour our energy into caring for others while leaving ourselves last. We give, we help, we listen, yet we neglect the one person who will always be with us. When you begin to prioritize self-care and self-compassion, you are not becoming selfish, you are becoming whole. This shift allows you to stop depending on other people for emotional rescue, because you learn to nurture your own heart and mind. Self-care is not just about surface rituals. It is about creating a space inside you where peace can grow. It means honoring your physical, mental, and emotional needs instead of dismissing them. It can be as simple as taking time to breathe before reacting, saying no to something that drains your energy, or resting when your body asks for it. When you consistently do these small things, you are sending a message to yourself that you matter. This builds an internal sense of safety and stability that no one else can give you. Self-compassion is the deeper layer of this practice. It means speaking to yourself with kindness rather than criticism, especially in moments of failure or struggle. Many people look for comfort from others because they have learned to be harsh with themselves. They seek outside reassurance to balance their inner self-attack. But when you cultivate self-compassion, you become your own source of comfort. You acknowledge your pain without judgment. You forgive your mistakes, and you encourage yourself just as you would a close friend. This kind of inner dialogue transforms your emotional landscape. When you practice self-care and self-compassion together, you create a strong foundation for emotional stability. Instead of riding the highs and lows of other people's moods, you stay anchored in your own calm center. This stability does not mean you never feel hurt or upset. It means you know how to tend to yourself when those feelings arise. You become less reactive and more responsive. You can feel an emotion fully, honor it, and then guide it toward healing rather than spiraling. One way to strengthen this practice is to build daily habits that nourish your inner state. Meditation, gentle exercise, mindful breathing, creative expression, or spending time in nature all help regulate your nervous system. They remind you that peace can be cultivated. Another powerful habit is to check in with yourself regularly. Ask yourself what you need emotionally in that moment, and then give it to yourself. Sometimes you might need rest, other times encouragement, and sometimes just a moment of silence. By practicing this, you are training yourself to become your own caretaker. It is also important to remove the belief that your worth depends on constant productivity or perfection. When you tie your identity to achievements, you create pressure and self-criticism that erode your stability. Self-compassion breaks this cycle by allowing you to be human. It gives you permission to grow at your own pace and to see mistakes as part of the journey, rather than a reason for shame. This softens the harsh edges of your inner world and makes it easier to stand strong when life challenges you. As you grow in self-care and self-compassion, your relationships with others shift as well. You stop expecting people to fill your emotional gaps because you are already filling them yourself. This allows you to approach others with more love and less demand. You can offer support without losing your center, and receive support without becoming dependent on it. This balance creates healthier and more respectful connections. Practicing self-care also teaches you about boundaries. When you respect your own time, energy, and emotional needs, you naturally set limits on what you will tolerate from others. This is not about building walls, but about creating a space where you can thrive. Boundaries protect your stability and prevent burnout. They also signal to others how you wish to be treated, and people often rise to meet the standard you set. It is natural to feel guilty at first when you start prioritizing yourself, especially if you have been conditioned to always put others first. But over time you will see that taking care of yourself allows you to show up more fully for others. A stable and compassionate person can give far more to the world than someone who is depleted and resentful. By tending to your own emotional garden, you are also creating a sanctuary for those around you. Emotional stability born from self-care and self-compassion is not about being untouched by life's challenges. It is about being able to meet those challenges without losing your sense of self. You become less vulnerable to manipulation, criticism, and rejection because your core is nourished from within. You are no longer waiting for someone to calm your fears or lift your spirit. You already know how to do that for yourself. When you practice these habits long enough, they stop feeling like effort and start feeling like your natural state. You wake up more grounded, move through the day with more ease, and handle conflicts with greater clarity. This is the quiet strength of someone who is emotionally independent, someone who has learned to be their own safe place. Setting healthy boundaries to protect your mental and emotional energy is one of the most transformative acts of self-respect you can give yourself. Many people struggle with boundaries because they confuse them with rejection or selfishness. But boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are lines of clarity that define where you end and someone else begins. Without them, you open the door for exhaustion, resentment, and emotional dependency. When you set boundaries, you take back control over your own space, your own time, and your own peace of mind, allowing you to stand strong and stable no matter what is happening around you. Healthy boundaries begin with self-awareness. You must first recognize what drains you, what overwhelms you, and what behaviors or patterns leave you feeling diminished. These signs are your internal signals telling you that a boundary is needed. Too often we ignore these signals out of fear of disappointing others, but every time we betray our own needs, we reinforce emotional dependence. By listening to these inner cues and respecting them, you tell yourself that your well-being matters. This internal message strengthens your sense of self and slowly breaks the cycle of needing others to validate or rescue you. Once you become aware of your needs, the next step is expressing them with clarity and calmness. Boundaries are not about anger or control. They are about communication and self-care. You might say no to extra obligations, ask for personal space, limit your exposure to negativity, or step away from relationships that consistently disrespect you. Each of these choices is a way of protecting your emotional energy. At first, it may feel uncomfortable to assert yourself, especially if you are used to people-pleasing. But over time, it becomes natural. You start to realize that every no you give to something draining is a yes you give to your own stability and growth. Protecting your mental and emotional energy also means monitoring what you consume, not just from people, but from information and environments. The conversations you engage in, the content you watch, and the places you spend time in all influence your emotional state. Setting boundaries here might look like limiting your social media time, stepping back from gossip, or choosing environments that uplift you rather than deplete you. This is another layer of emotional independence because you are no longer passively absorbing the energy of the world around you. You are actively shaping the atmosphere you allow into your life. Boundaries also teach others how to treat you. When you clearly and consistently maintain them, people begin to understand what is acceptable and what is not. This reduces conflict and manipulation because your standards are visible. Those who respect you will adjust, and those who do not will drift away, leaving space for healthier connections. This process may feel difficult at first, but it creates a support system built on respect rather than dependency. You begin to attract relationships where both sides can stand strong without draining one another. Another benefit of setting healthy boundaries is the space it gives you to recharge and reflect. When you are constantly available to others, You lose the opportunity to nurture yourself. Boundaries carve out the quiet moments you need to reset, meditate, exercise, or simply breathe. This replenishes your emotional reserves so that when you do give to others, you give from a place of fullness instead of depletion. This balance is essential to maintaining emotional stability over time. It is important to remember that boundaries are not fixed forever. As you grow and change, your needs and limits may shift. Practicing self-reflection helps you update your boundaries as needed. This flexibility ensures that your boundaries serve you rather than restrict you. It also allows you to remain compassionate toward others while still protecting yourself. Boundaries done with understanding and kindness strengthen relationships rather than harm them. You may also encounter guilt or resistance when you start setting boundaries, especially if you have been conditioned to prioritize others' comfort over your own. Recognize this as a sign of growth rather than a signal to stop. Every time you hold a boundary with respect and clarity, you build self-trust. That trust becomes a powerful antidote to emotional dependence because you learn that you can rely on yourself to keep yourself safe. Over time, healthy boundaries give you a sense of freedom. You are no longer pulled in every direction by external demands. You move through life with more clarity, knowing what is yours to carry and what is not. You communicate more honestly, make decisions more confidently, and interact with others from a place of strength. Your emotional energy becomes a precious resource that you manage wisely, and this creates a steady foundation for your growth and happiness. By setting healthy boundaries to protect your mental and emotional energy, you reclaim ownership of your inner world and move closer to a life of emotional independence and balance. Cultivating supportive habits that nurture your independence and confidence is the quiet work that builds a powerful and unshakable inner life. Emotional freedom is not created in a single moment of insight, but through small daily actions that shape your identity and strengthen your mind. Every habit you form is like a seed planted in your life. When you choose habits that support your well-being and growth, you create a structure that allows you to stand on your own 2 feet, no longer relying on others to provide your sense of security or worth. Supportive habits begin with consistency. When you practice something positive day after day, you show yourself that you can depend on your own discipline. This is very different from relying on someone else to keep you motivated or stable. For example, setting aside time each morning for reflection, exercise, or meditation builds a rhythm that centers you before the demands of the day begin. This steady rhythm trains your nervous system to find calm within you rather than outside of you. Over time, this sense of stability becomes part of your identity, making you less likely to seek emotional rescue from others. Another vital supportive habit is nurturing your inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself influences your confidence and independence more than any external voice. Replace harsh self-criticism with encouragement. Remind yourself of your strengths. Recognize your progress instead of obsessing over what you lack. This mental practice builds an inner coach that keeps you grounded and resilient even when external validation is absent. You no longer crumble at rejection or criticism because your internal voice has already affirmed your value. Healthy habits also include how you manage your environment. Surrounding yourself with positive influences, books, mentors, communities, and activities acts as a reinforcing loop for your independence. When you spend time in spaces that inspire growth, discipline, and self-respect, you naturally absorb those values. This shifts you away from environments that thrive on drama, dependency, or negativity. You start to notice that the more you invest in these positive spaces, the less you crave approval from toxic or draining sources. A crucial supportive habit is learning skills that increase your self-reliance. Whether it is improving your financial literacy, mastering a creative skill, or deepening your emotional intelligence, Each skill you develop reduces the areas where you feel helpless. This growth gives you the confidence to face challenges without leaning excessively on others. You begin to see yourself as capable of handling life's difficulties. And this belief builds a foundation of courage and self-trust that is hard to shake. Physical care is another layer of supportive habits that nurtures independence. When you take care of your health through movement, nutrition, rest, and mindfulness, you reinforce the message that your well-being is your responsibility. This self-care produces a stable body and mind from which confidence grows. You are less likely to become reactive or dependent when you feel strong, rested, and healthy because your physical state directly influences your emotional resilience. Another practice is maintaining a vision or purpose that belongs to you alone. When you set personal goals aligned with your values and take small steps toward them each day, you build a life that reflects your own choices rather than the expectations of others. This sense of purpose strengthens your independence because you no longer drift with the currents of external approval. Even when others disagree or misunderstand, you remain steady because your direction comes from within. Consistency in supportive habits also helps you navigate setbacks with more grace. Life will always bring unexpected challenges, but habits like mindfulness, journaling, exercise, and focused work act as anchors. They provide a sense of continuity and self-trust even when circumstances change. Instead of collapsing under stress, you lean on your established practices to recover. This reliability within yourself becomes your true safety net, far stronger than any temporary comfort someone else could provide. Cultivating supportive habits is not about perfection but about persistence. You will miss days, you will stumble, and you will adjust. But the key is to keep returning to the practices that feed your independence. Each return strengthens your resilience. Over time, these habits shift your identity from someone who needs constant reassurance to someone who generates their own momentum and stability. As your habits grow, your confidence naturally expands. You begin to feel proud of the life you are building and the strength you are embodying. This confidence shows in the way you speak, the way you walk, and the way you interact with others. You no longer need to chase validation because your daily practices have already validated you through discipline and growth. This quiet self-respect becomes a shield against emotional dependence and a magnet for healthier relationships. Embracing solitude as a space for growth, clarity, and personal empowerment is one of the most underestimated yet transformative steps you can take toward emotional independence. In a world where constant interaction, noise, and distractions dominate, solitude becomes almost a forgotten practice. Yet when you choose to spend time alone with purpose, you create a sanctuary where your mind can breathe, your emotions can settle, and your true self can emerge without interruption. This is not loneliness, but a deliberate pause from the outside world to reconnect with your inner world. In this quiet space, you begin to see your patterns, your desires, and your wounds with honesty, and from that awareness you cultivate a deeper strength. When you embrace solitude, you step away from the pressure of others' expectations and opinions. You no longer have to perform, please, or adjust. In that silence, masks fall off, and you meet yourself as you are. At first, this can feel uncomfortable because it reveals truths you may have avoided while surrounded by distractions. But it is in facing yourself that healing begins. Solitude gives you the chance to process emotions without external influence, to understand why you feel what you feel, and to let go of the dependency on others to constantly validate your experience. Over time, this process teaches you that you are enough even when no one else is around. In solitude, you discover your authentic voice. The more time you spend in silence, the clearer your intuition becomes. You start to hear the quiet signals of your own wisdom that are often drowned out by the noise of daily life. This clarity guides your choices, strengthens your boundaries and fuels your confidence. You begin to move through the world less reactive to outside opinions, because you have already built a deep inner dialogue with yourself. This is the foundation of emotional independence. Knowing yourself so fully that you no longer lose yourself in the presence of others. Solitude also creates the space for creativity and vision. When you are constantly surrounded by external input, your mind is too crowded to generate original ideas. But in quiet moments alone, new perspectives rise. You start to imagine possibilities, set goals, and plan paths aligned with your own values rather than those imposed by others. This creative energy strengthens your identity as a self-directed individual. You begin to see that you can build a life from your own blueprint, rather than waiting for someone else to hand it to you. A vital part of embracing solitude is learning to sit with your own emotions without running from them. When you stay present with your feelings, instead of seeking immediate distraction or comfort, you build emotional resilience. You learn that emotions rise and fall, that discomfort can be endured and transformed, and that you can be your own anchor in the midst of storms. This kind of self-mastery cannot be developed in constant company. It grows in the quiet space where you face yourself honestly. Embracing solitude does not mean cutting people off or rejecting connection. It means balancing connection with introspection. When you return to the world after time alone, you do so with more stability and authenticity. Your relationships improve because you are no longer clinging to them for validation or identity. You give love more freely because you have already filled your own cup. You listen more deeply because your mind is clear and unhurried. This balance of solitude and connection creates a harmony where you can belong without losing yourself. Practicing solitude can take many forms. It might be a daily morning ritual of sitting in stillness, a weekend spent in nature, an hour of journaling, or simply turning off all devices and breathing. The form matters less than the intention behind it. What matters is that you carve out time to be with yourself regularly. This consistency signals to your mind and body that your inner world is worth tending to, and with each practice you strengthen your capacity to be self-reliant and emotionally stable. It is natural to feel restless or even fearful when first entering solitude. Many people equate being alone with being unwanted or unloved. But as you continue the practice, the fear fades and is replaced by a deep sense of peace. You realize that solitude is not emptiness but fullness. A fullness of awareness, self-respect, and connection to something larger than yourself. This realization is profoundly liberating because it severs the idea that you must always be surrounded to be valuable or secure. Ultimately, embracing solitude as a space for growth, clarity, and personal empowerment allows you to return to the world stronger, clearer, and more whole. You stop leaning on others to fill the quiet spaces inside you, because you have learned to inhabit them yourself. You begin to carry within you a steady calm that no crowd or relationship can give or take away. This inner stability becomes your anchor, your compass, and your power. By embracing solitude, you discover the strength of being with yourself, and from that strength you become unshakable. As we reach the end of this journey, remember that every step you take toward emotional independence is a step toward reclaiming your life. By building inner strength, recognizing your worth, developing self-awareness, practicing self-care, setting healthy boundaries, cultivating supportive habits, and embracing solitude, you are creating a foundation that no one can shake. This is not about shutting the world out. It is about standing so firmly in yourself that you can meet the world with balance, dignity, and peace. You are learning to become your own anchor, your own safe place, your own source of power. Carry this understanding with you and let it guide your choices, your relationships, and your future. I wish you courage on your path, strength in your growth, and calm in your heart. Good luck. and thank you for allowing this message to be part of your journey.